Hey everybody, Economic Ninja here. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're getting ready to have an awesome Christmas weekend, no matter where you are in the world. But we're going to be talking about something that is going on in the US, but it's actually going on all around the world, and that is inflation. And that moment that we've been waiting for, we're getting closer and closer because it's already starting. We're going into deflation. And deflation, going from inflation to deflation, does not happen all at once, okay? But I'm going to talk about this. We're going to explain a couple things, and then I'm going to give you my take. So I'm going to link this story in the description below. It's out of Market Watch. It says U.S. inflation soars, spending softens in November. All right. Now, remember, we've talked about this before. When we move from an inflationary period, we will tend to go in from inflation to deflation. Why? Because the best cure for high prices is actually high prices. The more if things go up in price, the fewer and fewer people that keep chasing that price up, whether it be in consumer staples. Consumer staples, it's one of those things where, well, it's things that we need to live on, right? Things that we use on an everyday basis. But for sure, this trend always starts in the the items that people don't need, like electronics, things like that, all right? So it says core inflation is up 4.7%, and it's the highest since 1989. Now, to talk about core inflation, we need to understand a couple things. This is what core inflation is. It represents the long-run trend in price level. In measuring long-run inflation, transitory price changes should be excluded. Now, that's a really neat thing. This is I just really quick Googled meaning of core inflation to read it to you guys. And it's interesting that they use transitory, okay? Transitory changes should be excluded. Transitory inflation is like what we experienced in lumber this last year, okay? But now we're seeing inflation. That's just one item that really exploded in price, right? Which I actually called in the spring transitory hyperinflation, which what it was, because we saw hundreds of % increase in the price of lumber, right? Then we saw it mellow out. Why? Because people stopped buying. So the futures market collapsed, and it followed through into the physical market. Now we're seeing that rise again for other reasons. Sorry, I digress on lumber. But again, we want to talk about this. Core inflation represents the long run trend in price level. Now, you've been seeing all over the news, we haven't seen inflation like this since 1981, right? And I want to remind you, in the late 70s, we had a massive run up in inflation. And then by 1980 and 81, it peaked, and then it was coming down. So when we talk or you see news stories about inflation not being this bad since 1981, I want you to understand that it was worse than where we are now. And I do believe in many sectors of the world's prices, for lack of better terms, we're going to see higher inflation, but deflation is starting to rear its head. So one way of accomplishing this, and we're still talking about core inflation, it says one way of accomplishing this is by excluding items frequently subject to volatile prices, like food and energy. So that is what we're referring to. So when they say volatile prices like food and energy, remember, there's a lot of the futures markets that have to do with pumping these prices up or collapsing them down as well. People gambling or betting on where they believe the price of these items will be in the future, okay? That's why when you see during the winter times, as winter is starting, you see the price of natural gas and propane futures start to rise because traders or speculators know that there is going to be more of a demand. There's going to be more headlines, news stories, things like that about the need for and the price of natural gas and propane. So you start to see they have these cyclical, seasonal price swings, right? So now what's really interesting is that we are seeing everything coming up at the exact same time, right? Because of a couple of different things. The economy opening up and the reality of the supply chain, having all these cracks in it, because when the economy opened back up, everybody flooded in, they wanted to get life back to normal, and it caused all these big snags. Now, going back to this story, and this is about the deflation part. Oh, sorry, lost my thing. It says that the consumer spending rose 0.6% in November, and after a 1.4% gain in the prior month, they started seeing certain aspects of the economy start to slow down. So let's do this. Sorry, I'm going to something new. Just gave me an idea of what to hit. So right now we're seeing normal inflation rates hitting around 6.2, 6.4%, which if you follow Shadow Stats, John Williams, you know that's complete crap. As a matter of fact, you also know that if you go to the grocery store and you've been shopping or going to the gas pump lately in the last few months, actually 6 months, you know that 6.2 is a joke, right? But that's because they keep messing with these numbers. So it says here, personal income rose 0.4% after a 0.5% rise in October, right? So every month, it seems like lately, wages are rising, but very small. When you compare that to the official, even the official numbers of 6.2% inflation, less than half of 1% is a joke, right? So people are not able to keep up with inflation. It says, looking at inflation, the 12-month increase in the PCE index, the Federal Reserve's preferred inflation gauge, which we all know is total crap, jumped to 5.7% in November from 5% in the prior month. Now remember, a long time ago, about a whole year ago, the Federal Reserve had a mandate to keep inflation at 2%. Well, they overshot it. And now they've completely abandoned that idea. And now I think in the next 6 months it's going to get really gnarly. So it says, the big picture, the spike in inflation justifies the Fed's pivot earlier this month away from its dovish policy stance, right? So now they're talking about the whole hawkish thing where the Fed is going to start to pull back. It's, I say quantitative easing for lack of better terms right now, because the second I hit the record button, my mind goes blank. But, pulling back on their bond purchases, things like that. They're trying to explain that things are getting out of control. But what they don't, and what I think is really interesting in this story, and I'm going to link it below, is that, like the title says, U.S. inflation soars, spending softens in November. Nowhere in this story do I see anything about people slowing their spending. And I think it's so important for you to understand. This is what they don't want. The Fed is scared to death of deflation because as people get fearful and they spend less money into the economy, things collapse. And it starts out, it's like a roller coaster. As you're cresting that top, the first car, if you're in the first car, you're excited because you're about to go on that roller coaster and you've been just cruising up that mountain at a certain speed. But as you crest that hill, what you find is that the first car is now looking down the precipice of a collapse, right? That down part of the roller coaster. What happens to the speed of the coaster once it's off of the chain, the weight of the entire coaster, it actually starts to slow. Right? And what's happening is the weight of the back is still holding the front car back. But when enough of the roller coaster, over half of it, tilts past the top of the roller coaster, then what we see is an immediate downturn. And that's how deflation it could be slowly, and then all at once. And that's what's happening. And nowhere in this story that I can see are they talking about people slowing their spending, but we all know it's true because you and I both know that since you're spending more at the gas pump and at the grocery store, you're less likely to go out and buy the newest version of a video game because you have less money because your income's not going up. So hey guys, I'm going to link this story below. I appreciate you guys checking this out. Please share this everywhere you can. And thanks to all the new subscribers. Thank you for the thumbs up you guys are giving the channel. I really appreciate it. Can't wait to see you guys in Denver coming up soon. January 8th? Saturday, January the 8th. We'll talk to you guys later. The Economic Ninja is out.